I thank you. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and thank you for your attendance. It's my utmost honor and pleasure to welcome you to the 37th Ordinary Session of the Assembly of the African Union. Let me congratulate our Excellencies for their dedication and in advancing the noble vision outlined in Agenda 2063, reaffirming our collective pursuit of the Africa we want. Together, we aspire towards an integrated, prosperous, and peaceful Africa, driven by its own citizens, representing a dynamic force in the international arena, guided by the principles of regional economic integration and visionary political leadership. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, and honorable participants, I'm privileged to guide you through the distinguished lineup of the opening ceremony. We'll have His Excellency Mr. Moussa Faki Mohammed, Chairperson of the African Union Commission. He will deliver his statement as the first opening statement. Following His Excellency, we are honored to welcome His Excellency Dr. Abiy Ahmed, Prime Minister of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia. Continuing with our esteemed speakers, we have the privilege to hearing from His Excellency Mr. Ahmed Abul Ghaid, the Secretary General of the League of Arab States. Next in our program, we will be honored by the presence of His Excellency Mr. Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, President of the Federative Republic of Brazil. Subsequently, we will have the privilege of listening to His Excellency Mr. Mohammed Ibrahim Shtia, Prime Minister of the State of Palestine. Lastly, we will conclude with remarks from His Excellency Mr. Ghazali Ousmani, President of the Union of Comoros and the Chairperson of the African Union. Without any further ado, I have the privilege and honor to invite His Excellency Mr. Moussa Faki Mohammed, Chairperson of the African Union Commission, to deliver his statement. Excellency.
Excellences, Monsieur Azali Assoumani, président de l'Union de Comores et président en exercice de l'Union africaine, Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs les chefs d'État, de gouvernement et de délégation, distingués invités. Je voudrais d'abord vous souhaiter la bienvenue au siège de l'Union africaine dans cette très belle salle qui porte bien son nom, la salle Nelson Mandela. Ces grands militants de... Je profite également de l'occasion pour avoir une pensée pieuse à la famille, au gouvernement et au peuple de Namibie, à toute l'Afrique, avec la disparition d'un autre grand combattant, un grand militant, le président Yaa'ii Gamtaa. Que la terre de ses ancêtres lui soit légère. Je voudrais également saluer la présence parmi nous d'un grand militant, le président Lula da Silva. Qu'il soit la bienvenue en Afrique et au siège de l'Union africaine. Excellence Azali Assoumani, président de l'Union de président en exercice de l'Union africaine, Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs les chefs d'État, de gouvernement et de délégation, Excellences, Monsieur le Président Lula da Silva, président du Brésil, Monsieur le Premier ministre de la Palestine, Monsieur le Secrétaire général de la Ligue arabe, Mesdames et Messieurs les ministres, Mesdames et Messieurs les commissaires, Mesdames et Messieurs les représentants des organisations internationales, distingués invités, Mesdames et Messieurs, en vos rangs, grades et qualités. Quelques semaines seulement après la célébration de la nouvelle année 2024, nous sommes encore dans les délais raisonnables des présentations de vœux. Aussi voudrais-je saisir l'opportunité de la présente session de votre conférence pour former à l'endroit de chacun et chacune de vous, ainsi qu'à vos gouvernements et à vos peuples, mes meilleurs vœux de paix, de stabilité et de prospérité. Monsieur le Président en exercice, Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs les chefs d'État et de gouvernement, j'ai déjà passé 7 bonnes années à la tête de la Commission de l'Union africaine, années au cours desquelles j'ai bénéficié de votre sagesse et de votre expérience, notamment celle des
the reservoir of capital that I have accumulated and the lesson learned from the life of our organization allow me to begin the formulation of some thoughts, which I will conclude at the beginning of next year when I will be bidding farewell, inshallah. Excellency, Mr. Chairman, Excellency, Heads of State and Government, diminish in importance. Peace, political and institutional instability, climate change,
l'intégration, la pauvreté, la marginalisation des femmes et des jeunes dans les processus de développement et de leadership dans nos systèmes politiques et sociaux. La complexification inouïe du monde est loin d'arranger les choses. La conflictualité, la violence et le déclin des grands principes ont pris, hélas, le dessus sur l'humilité, la paix et la noblesse des valeurs fondatrices de la civilisation humaine. Non seulement les inégalités sociales se sont creusées, les injustices se sont multipliées, mais l'hégémonie et les velléités absurdes de régler nos divergences par la force brutale et vaine prévalent publiquement sous les yeux de tous. Le cas le plus flagrant est celui de Gaza, en Palestine, littéralement rasé, un peuple presque exterminé dans l'intégrité physique des dizaines de milliers de ses habitants, humilié dans sa dignité et spolié de tous ses droits. Le droit international humanitaire, les droits de l'homme, la morale tout court sont allègrement ignorés, piétinés, bafoués. صاحب المعالي رئيس الوزراء الفلسطيني أخي العزيز، كن واثقا من شجبنا القوي لهذه العملية التي لا شبيه لها في تاريخ الإنسانية، وكذلك من تضامننا التام مع شعبكم الشعب الفلسطيني المظلوم. وتعلقنا الذي لا يلين بالعدالة تجاهه واتجاه كافة الشعوب والدول التي يجب الآن وليس غدا.
Not tomorrow, but today, that they need these rights, so that they can live in full liberty and freedom in their state, in peace and security.
Il me plaît dans ce cadre d'exprimer ma satisfaction à la double réaction judiciaire et éthique de l'Afrique du Sud. Sa saisine de la Cour internationale de justice trouve tout son fondement dans l'indéfectible attachement de l'Afrique à de telles valeurs. Elle rappelle avec force, résonance, la parole de Nelson Mandela, lorsqu'il affirmait « Nous savons très bien que notre liberté est incomplète sans celle de la Palestine ». La décision que vient de prendre la Cour internationale de justice prolonge la pertinence de la démarche et retentit comme une victoire, non seulement pour l'Afrique du Sud, non seulement pour l'Afrique, mais également pour tous les pays qui ont témoigné.
All the countries which have shown their unwavering support for the just cause of the Palestinian people. Excellency, Mr. Chairman, Excellencies, the heads of state and government, war continues to rage in Europe between Russians and Ukrainians. The scope of its devastation of human lives and
au grand préjudice de tous les peuples du monde.
the great detriment of the peoples of the world. Here in Africa, terrorism is destroying some of our states by reversing the priorities through the increase in exorbitant military spending at the expense of vital social sectors, while opening the way to misleading populist speeches. Unconstitutional changes of government have multiplied in total defiance of the entire political and legal order that had founded our organization. Never since the establishment of the African Union has such a number of transitions following unconstitutional change of government has been seen in Africa. Our failure to counter such a phenomenon,
au lieu d'être des modes joyeux de transfert ou de maintien pacifique du pouvoir, les élections sont devenues, par l'ampleur de leurs irrégularités, des facteurs d'approfondissement des crises. Il est dès lors légitime de se demander ce que sont devenues notre architecture de paix et de sécurité africaine, l'APSA, et sa sœur jumelle, l'architecture de gouvernance africaine.
The mere mention of whose acronyms galvanized us and made us shudder with pride. Are we being deceived by designing them according to their current physiognomy? Did we err by blind mimicry in designing them the way we did? How can we escape this nagging question? Libya remains divided and exposed to all kinds of external interference to satisfy their insatiable appetites. We recognize the efforts that are being made for national reconciliation through the high-level committee of the African Union that was established under the leadership of President Sassou Nguesso and with the active support of the Libyan authorities, and whose chairman of the Presidential Council is here, and I thank them. The Sudan, bruised, torn, deeply trampled by its elites in sinking into chaos, and the calls of its people for peace and justice remain ignored. How, therefore, can we not vigorously condemn the stubbornness of the authors of this senseless adventure and urgently promote a consensual political solution which IGAD and the AU, supported by the entire segments of the international community, had called for as soon as the war broke out? The Horn of Africa continues to generate the most worrying trends for all peace and justice-loving people. The imperative need for the full respect of the sovereignty, integrity, security, and fundamental interests of all the countries in the region have never been so more crucial than it is today. The Great Lakes region is multiplying the signs of worsening of its eternal crisis fueled by the unresolved issues in the east of the region is multiplying the signs of worsening of its eternal crisis fueled by the unresolved issues in the east of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and Africa cannot remain arms folded and give up and not work to promote genuine peace in the region. The Sahel is an extreme source of concern with a vacuum that has dangerously established there since the withdrawal of the United Nations mission, the denunciation of the Algiers Agreement, and the withdrawal of Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger from ECOWAS. The situation in Senegal, a model country in terms of democracy, worries us to the greatest extent. Our fervent hope is that it quickly finds the path of wisdom to resolve this institutional crisis in accordance with the principles of the rule of law and the fundamental interests of its great people. In this context, I welcome the position of the Senegalese government to take into high consideration the decision of the Constitutional Council of the country and wish every success to the consultations planned by the government to decide in a consensual spirit the best ways for the organization of inclusive, free and fair and transparent elections as quickly as possible. Excellency Mr. Chairman, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Excellencies, heads of state and government, ladies and gentlemen. However, beyond this bleak picture and its litany of difficulties, we made some achievements, and the various reports on our agenda will highlight these. Institutional reform is progressing successfully despite the shortcomings that we are called upon to identify and address in lucidity. It is for me an opportunity to thank President Paul Kagame, who, with the rigor that we know of, has assured President Ruto, who has now been appointed to succeed him, for all the support in order to conclude this useful venture which is indispensable for our organization. Integration has progressed, and the African Continental Free Trade Area is gradually getting underway, even if its pace seems to be slow compared to our forecasts and expectations. Bold recovery measures must be taken with determination. The Peace Fund is taking shape. Its operationalization is being done at a satisfactory pace. More sacrifices from our member states and concrete contributions from our partners are necessary. New organs have emerged in response to our needs in the field of health in particular. Their prompt operationalization remains one of our major challenges, since it refers to the recurring phenomenon of decisions that are adopted and they are not implemented, which becomes a real threat to our collective credibility. The African common positions have been strengthened on the issues of climate, reform of global governance, financing of African peacekeeping missions, on which has been obtained at the United Nations Security Council. This is the moment to express my grateful thanks to all the members of the Council who contributed to this. I would like to make a special mention here of the enthusiastic support that my dear brother, friend, Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of the United Nations, absent for reasons beyond his control and creates a real void on this podium, have given us throughout these long years of struggle is a support to obtain this result. The accession of the African Union to the G20 Forum urges us to succeed by effectively making our irreplaceable contribution to the solution of global challenges while we intensify our advocacy in favor of the continental priorities. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, there is obviously a vast field where we have sown seeds and harvested quite well. There is therefore no point in self-flagellation. There is also no point in turning a blind eye to the paralyzing autism through denial of our shortcomings and failings. The final purpose of my remarks today is to take the risk of looking into some of these shortcomings and institutional limits that continue to challenge us. The first shortcoming that the institutional reform of our Union has left unaddressed concern the powers of the Commission and particularly its chairperson. I feel free and without any embarrassment to point this out because since I'm almost at the end of my term and the solution to the question will no longer concern me personally. Although the chairperson of the Commission is recognized in the text as the legal representative and the chief counting officer of the organization, he is paradoxically deprived of sufficient margins of maneuver to act urgently on strategic issues. Another phenomenon deserves your close attention: the frantic tendency to make decisions without real political will to implement them has grown to such an extent that it has become devastating to our individual and collective credibility. As an illustration, over the last 3 years, 2021, 2022, and 2023, 93% of the decisions have not been implemented. This almost systematic defiance of the decisions of your summit is perceptible at the level of member states as well as the level of the regional economic communities. It has become commonplace to see them overstep and even blithely violate the decisions of the continental bodies. In front of them, for example, the recurring decisions of the PSC, ignored and violated, have become unimportant, without any impact. Subject to all unfortunate interpretation, subsidiary has been frankly overused. By a strange semantic shift, subsidiarity has come to sound like substitution. This results in a legitimate questioning of the relevance of the practice of crowning our meetings with decisions. Should we let ourselves be carried away by the force of routine, business as usual, or courageously pull ourselves together? We have no other recourse but you, Excellencies. Our eyes are turned towards you, and our expectations also. A major constraint has continued to interfere in our general action. It is what we have faced in the operationalization of our international partnership. Africa must certainly count on its own intellectual strength, the genius of its peoples, and its immense potential of extreme wealth. However, it cannot evolve in isolation at a time when globalization is in full swing. Africa can only develop in a solid and fruitful relationship with its international environment. Consequently, the issue of partnership arises acutely. Bold thinking and courageous decisions must be made. Our credibility and the good international positioning of our organization are at stake. Another issue concerns inter-African solidarity. During the times of national liberation and the fight against the execrable apartheid regime, African solidarity, carried by the powerful feeling of Pan-Africanism, it was at its peak. It united us in a liberating historical current. Today, my experience during my 2 terms has enabled me on a daily basis to note a real decline in the beautiful spirit of African solidarity and Pan-Africanism, the soul of our Renaissance. I ask myself and to your Excellencies the question of how to reconnect with this heroic and glorious time. How should we stop watching terrorism ravage some of our countries without doing anything? How can we accept just watching African countries destroyed, entire regions engulfed by the tremors and tsunamis without doing anything significant? How can we rediscover our African humanity, the basis of our identity and our common destiny? Excellency, Mr. Chairman, Excellencies, Heads of State and Government, we are now strongly challenged by the urgency of clear positions on this set of issues at the heart of the emergence of our organization and our continent. The strengthening of our unity and the intensification of our struggles require a new awakening, a true renaissance of nationalism and Pan-Africanism. May I, in support of my plea, draw from the heritage of our founding fathers. And I take the liberty of quoting in the favor of the theme of the year on education, a renowned, illustrious teacher, a renowned educator whom we are preparing to honor here, right here at our headquarters, with a statue of his historical dimension.
I quote, "The role of African nationalism is different, or should be different, from the nationalism of the past. That the African national state is an instrument for the unification of Africa and not for dividing Africa. That African nationalism is meaningless, is dangerous, is anachronic if it is not at the same time Pan-Africanist."
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I have now the honor and pleasure to invite... Thank you.
Excellency, President Azali Assoumani, outgoing Chairperson of the African Union, Excellency Lula da Silva, President of Brazil, Excellency Moussa Faki Mohamed, Chairperson of the African Union Commission, Excellencies, Heads of State and Government, distinguished ministers, ambassadors, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Ethiopia. It is an honor to be with you today. Since we last met, the world has witnessed profound transformations shaped by geopolitical competition, economic challenge, climate change, and technological advancements. While we celebrate the African Union permanent membership in the G20 and the opportunity it gives the continent to be heard on global issues, there are still important questions we need to address. What role do we, Africans, want to play in this evolving global power structure? And how do we become key players in the distribution of economic power? In an attempt to answer these questions, allow me to take a step back in history. Africa is where modern humans arose. Our ancient kingdoms and empires were home to many significant inventions and innovations, particularly in agricultural techniques, in the use of medicinal plants, and in the construction of impressive architectural structures, all being a testament to Africa's important contributions to the world civilizations in critical areas such as science, technology, and education. However, our continental path towards greater achievements and progress was disrupted by colonialism. The strategic approach of the colonial powers was centered around dismantling the core essence of our nations, undermining our knowledge, our spiritual and cultural heritage, replacing our ancient education systems with Western-style education that was introduced as being superior. Even though Ethiopia dealt colonialism a heavy blow at the Battle of Adwa, attempts to undermine Ethiopia's unity by exploiting our diversity to perpetuate ongoing conflicts continued throughout the centuries. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, uncovering these deep historic facts and bringing them to light is necessary to move forward for us as Africans for greater self-determination and dignity. Our land is rich. We are blessed with favorable weather, arable land, water, forests, natural resources, and a large youth population who embody the great potential of our continent. We should not be seeking for aid. In order to grow and ensure sustainable development, education is key. In the last 5 years, Ethiopia has made significant progress towards universal access to education. We have built over 30,000 kindergartens and primary schools. We are heavily investing in secondary schools and TVETs to ensure quality and skills development as well as meet labor market needs. Today, new technologies and innovative learning models can help our continent leapfrog into the future. Technology has taken learning beyond the classroom. Artificial intelligence is delivering personalized learning tailored to children's needs by breaking down cultural and language barriers. Such advancements will allow our youth to unleash their entrepreneurial spirit, problem-solving skills, and determination to overcome challenges on Africa's development path. But we all know that one of the major factors affecting education systems are investments and financial constraints. Our financing needs are growing due to climate change and the cost of living crisis, among others. Debt is a burden. Inequalities in the international financial architecture makes access to finance inadequate and expensive. The world needs to internalize the fact that the population projection of Africa in 2015 is 2.5 billion people, making us the most populous continent in the world. Africa's rise should be important to the entire world. We need to grow. We need to build infrastructure, assure food security, strengthen our health and education systems, and create jobs. All of this requires long-term financing. While I renew my call to all major financial agencies to consider the realities of today's world, and particularly for middle and low-income countries, allow me to draw your attention on some of the opportunities our continent has for the Africa we all want. First comes Africa's thriving digital economy. Majority on the continent have phones, and mobile data is rapidly growing. We are starting to produce large data sets that the AI system require to allow us to learn, make prediction, inform our policies, and act. Having a robust Pan-African data governance strategy aligned with the principles of Agenda 2063 will boost the continent's competitiveness, ensure productive cross-border data flow, and protect individual rights. In addition, increasing infrastructure connectivity between our countries by building roads, airports, Ports, rail networks, pipelines, and communication networks will link communities, increase trade, and enable economic integration. Furthermore, I would like to touch upon the need to secure peace and stability, which are, of course, the necessary foundation for economic and social development. Ethiopia firmly believes that regional and continental integration is essential to diversify our economies, ensure peaceful coexistence amongst neighbors, and work together for our common growth. Africa needs strong regional and continental platforms where national development challenges from a geographical, logistics, and security perspective are taken into consideration. All of us here gathered today need to embrace the complexity of the world we live in and have critical debates to bring about creative but yet pragmatic solutions that will lead us to the transformation for Africa to prosper. I conclude by thanking our outgoing chairperson, President Azali Assoumani, for his leadership and for representing our organization on the global stage. Allow me to also warmly congratulate our new chairperson, wishing him success during his tenure. I wish you all a fruitful summit, a fruitful stay in your second home, and God bless Ethiopia, God bless Africa. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Excellency, for your statement. ويشرفني أن أقدم لكم معالي أحمد أبو الغيط الأمين العام لجامعة الدول العربية لتقديم كلمته.
To make his address.
فخامة الرئيس عثمان غزالي رئيس جمهورية جزر القمر، أصحاب الفخامة ورؤساء الدول والحكومات، معالي السيد موسى فقي رئيس مفوضية الاتحاد الإفريقي، السيدات والسادة، توجهوا بخالص التحية إلى فخامة الرئيس عثمان غزالي على رئاسته الناجحة للاتحاد الإفريقي. واسمحوا.
Commission, ladies and gentlemen, I wish to greet President Ousmane Azali for the successful chairmanship of the African Union. Allow me also to congratulate Mohammed Ould Ghazouani for the chairmanship of the Union. We remain confident that his personal leadership will revamp the level of partnership to support the priorities of our countries and in support of our common causes. Arab-African partnership is one of the oldest partnerships where we have deep ties between Africa and the Arab world. We look forward to promoting our common efforts to promote this partnership with the new horizons to benefit from the natural resources in the Arab and African regions. The holding of the Afro-Arab Summit represents relentlessly working with all the parties consolidate continuously and relentlessly working with all the parties to organize this summit. We aim at consolidating our efforts to ensure the success of the cooperation between the Arab and African regions. We will continue with the efforts to establish the fund to deal with natural disasters, as well as the Afro-Arab Center on Migration, in addition to other frameworks for institutional cooperation. Ladies and gentlemen, the Gaza Strip is still witnessing a barbaric, unprecedented
viole le droit international humanitaire. Des dizaines de milliers
of thousands have lost their lives, mainly children and women. The occupation that has no legal status is still continuing massacres and is implementing the plans of the extreme right to the land from its people and to continue with the genocide. This war shows the failure of the world to stop this world, in spite of international opinion and the rejection of this war. This war, on the other hand, has awakened the voice of the South. It has united the voice of the countries that are supporting the Palestinian right, and which also reject colonization. That have supported the values of justice, legality, and human rights. These positions need to continue and to become deeper, to end the colonization and to establish the Palestinian states on the borders of 1967. We believe that this is the only rational solution to end the conflict. This solution was adopted by the League of Arab States through its plan agreed upon in Beirut in 2002. We should take this opportunity to hail the efforts made by South Africa and the effort they still continue to do to bring the colonization to account and expose its crimes, to end the massacre by instituting a case against Israel in the International Court of Justice. The war is still continuing in Sudan between the warring factions. This war is stepping up, and the League of Arab States has not stopped calling in all its decisions and meetings, calling for the end of armed conflict, to stop the bloodshed, and to ensure the protection of the people of Sudan, and also in support for the unity of the country. We call for working with the African Union and the United Nations to achieve our goals on the basis of the following principles. First of all, maintaining the institutions of the Sudanese state and stopping their collapse. Secondly, support the efforts to have a comprehensive and sustainable ceasefire, including the efforts of the Jeddah Forum, in addition to other efforts to stop the bloodshed. Thirdly, starting a comprehensive political process that should lead to the establishment of a transitional government with specific missions. Dear guests, the sovereignty of Somalia is one of the main priorities of the League of Arab States. The League is satisfied with the achievements made by Somalia at different levels. But the major challenge faced by the Somali state at the moment is the attempts of separation from its regions. The League is continuing its efforts to support Somalia and to defend its sovereign rights in cooperation with the federal government of Somalia, the United Nations, the African Union, and the relevant regional organizations to avoid any threat to its territories. As regards the situation in Libya, and which represents a common priority for us, as partners in the Arab and African regions. We call upon the various Libyan parties to find a political solution and to go beyond the hurdles that impede the establishment, the organization of elections, ending with political stability that can guarantee the unity of the country and ends the foreign military presence, in addition to promoting dialogue with neighboring countries. The League of Arab States affirms the need to work closely with the African Union in order to reach these objectives. The challenges faced are tremendous and continuing, but our joint work will find the way to meet these challenges and build the future. I do thank you very much for your attention. The Secretary General of the League of Arab States. Now I am honored and pleased to present to you Dr. Mohammed Ibrahim Shtia, the Prime Minister of the State of Palestine, to give his address.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أصحاب الفخامة والمعالي رؤساء الوفود.
Heads of delegation, Excellency President of the African Union, Ousmane Ozali, the President of the Union of the Comoros, dear friends and brother Moussa Fakir Mohammed, the Chairperson of the African Union Commission, dear brother Excellency Abiy Ahmed, Prime Minister of the Federal Republic of Ethiopia, dear brother Excellency Ahmed Abul Gheid, Secretary General of the League of Arab States, dear friend President Lula da Silva, President of Brazil. I agree, my greetings from Palestine to Africa, from the people of Palestine, from the children who sleep hungry every night, from women who lost their husbands, from women who have been unjustly killed, from children who died before they could have the opportunity of life, and others who have become orphans after killing all their family members. From 28,000 martyrs, most of them are children and women, from the pains of 20,000 injured people who are still struggling for their lives, from hundreds of people whose homes have been destroyed and whose corpses are still under the rubble, from Gaza, from its cold winter, from the millions of people who are deprived of energy, food, shelter, and medication, and from people whom the world could not assist, from hundreds of Palestinians in Israeli prisons who are facing repression, the lack of sleep, torture, and maltreatment and repression. Greetings to Africa from the land of Palestine, which is facing a colonial settlement-based project followed by the terrorism of settlers. Greetings to Africa from our sacred land, from the Holy Mosque, from the churches which are desecrated by the Israeli army. We are defending, as we defend our land, our people, as you struggled against colonization in your own countries. Today, Israel is killing in revenge It's killing for the sake of killing. After 130 days of aggression, it destroyed more than 281,000 homes. Israel wants to continue the war till the end of this year. This is accompanied by destruction so that its prime minister remains a prime minister. We should not allow him to do this. He does not listen to anyone. He does not listen to America, its historical ally, and nor from Europe or anyone. Therefore, we must talk with Israel on the basis of action, not simply on the basis of political declarations and positions. We must have a plan to put the colonial project under sanctions. The United States and some European countries have put a number of settlers under its lists of terrorists. This is important. But what is even more important is to boycott the products of Israeli settlements and to boycott the settlements and the settlers and to impose sanctions on this state that violates international law and international humanitarian law, and it is committing crimes against the Palestinian people. Greetings to Africa and to South Africa. Greetings to North Africa. Greetings to East Africa, to West Africa, to Central Africa, Africa that has become free of colonization. And it is now developing with the leadership of its national leaders to achieve sustainable development and to promote education and to catch up with the rest of the world without leaving anyone behind. And all the efforts to fight against ignorance and disease. Africa, on its behalf and on behalf of the rest of the world. South Africa now is bringing Israel to the International Court of Justice, and it has accused it of genocide against the Palestinian people in Gaza. Today, Israel is accused in front of the entire world and in front of the International Court of Justice as a criminal state. On the 19th of February, the International Court of Justice will also start hearings of 56 cases to show that the Israeli occupation is illegal. All of this on the basis of a decision made by the UN General Assembly as presented by Palestine. Their participants yesterday, Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International said that Israel was an apartheid state, a state of racial discrimination following everything that happened. Is it really acceptable to be with Israel and with Israeli policies? The African Union was right in preventing Israel from becoming an observer country in this union. The African Union was correct when it prevented the coming of Israeli representative into this meeting last year, and they were taken out of the meeting hall. Let's hear loud and clear the voice of union, as it has always been the case, by calling for an end to the killing and the aggression that is perpetrated by Israel against the Palestinian people, particularly in Gaza and today in Rafah and in the occupied territories and Al-Quds. Let your voice be heard to fight against the settlement-based colonial project that is being implemented by Israel in the Palestinian land. Let your voice be heard to call for bringing in assistance to the Palestinian people in Gaza. What is brought in today does not represent more than 8%. Let your voice be heard to oblige Israel to provide hospitals with energy and water. Let the voice of Africa and the voice of your union be loud and clear to support the Palestinian people to establish the Palestinian state and to recognize it as a state, a member state of the United Nations because it was created 12 years ago. Ladies and gentlemen, today there are different political projects that are being considered. There is a political project led by the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and we are working with them. And ideas were also brought forth by Spain and the European Union, calling for an international peace conference that will lead to a recognition of the state of Palestine. And there were also general ideas presented by the United Kingdom at a time when there was no partner in Palestine. There are also efforts in the United States, but these efforts talk about the two-state solution. We welcome all these efforts, but we also wanted to go beyond the stage of declarations and ideas to action. Ladies and gentlemen, the peace process since the Madrid conference in 1991 dates back 31 years ago. But there is a delay, and there are more settlers. The separation wall is completed. Our financial funds are frozen by Israel, and now we have a genocide war in addition to terrorism by settlers. All of this is in favor of the Israeli strategy to sabotage the two-state solution. Today, we cannot go back to negotiations that can last for another 33 years more. The world needs to recognize the state of Palestine on the basis of the borders of 1967 and this decision can be adopted by the Peace and Security Council, and by providing a time frame to end the occupation and to deal with the issues of refugees, settlements, and in this way only can we be faithful to the souls of our martyrs. It is only in this way Palestinian prisoners can become free. It is only in this way peace in the region can become possible for Palestine, for the Arab world, and for the rest of the world. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, I wish to reiterate my thanks to the African Union and for its support to Palestine, the voice of freedom and justice. It has invited Palestine to this meeting. Long live Palestine, and long live African and Palestinian solidarity. Thank you very much for your attention.
Shukran.
Thank you, Dr. Mohammed Ibrahim Shtia, Prime Minister of the State of Palestine. We thank you for your address.
Honorable distinguished delegates, I now have the pleasure to invite His Excellency Mr. Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, President of the Federative Republic of Brazil. Excellency.
First of all, I would enjoy to say to all of you that I have already participated in a political visit and also participated in many conferences and demonstrations. And so I want to say to all of you now that I am thrilled and deeply emotioned to be participating in the 37th Summit meeting of the African Union. I also want to greet all the members, and especially our brother, Nani, that is a brother. The Prime Minister of Ethiopia received me very warmly in his cabinet, and also would like to greet our dear Abusami and our dear President of the African Union, which I had the honor to be invited for this meeting. And I also would like to greet all presidents, all prime ministers, distinguished guests, and allow me to treat you as brothers and sisters. Usually we treat ourselves by Your Excellencies. Many times we are distant ourselves in our relationship when actually we should get closer and build more ties. I would like to say to all of you first that it's with great joy that I come back for the 21st time to African continent, now once again as the President of Brazil, to address the leaders of the African Union. I come here to reaffirm the partnership and the ties of our country and of our people with this brother continent. The African struggle has a lot in common with the challenges that we face in Brazil, the Brazilian people faces. More than half of the 200 million Brazilians recognize themselves as Afro descent. We, Africans and Brazilians, we need to design our own path in the international order that is now emerging. We need to create a new global governance capable of confronting the challenges of our time. The thesis of the minimum state are now in effect anymore. To plan agricultural development and industrial development is once again part of public policies in all quadrants of the earth. The digital and energy transitions demand incentive and guidance from the governments. Attempts to try to restore an international system based on ideological blocks do not have a ballast in reality. Multipolarity is a component that we cannot forget and welcome to the 21st century. The consolidation of the BRICS as the main space of networking of the emerging countries is undeniable advancement. Without the developing countries, it will not be possible the opening of a new cycle of world expansion that will combine growth, reduction of inequalities, and environmental conservation with the enhancement of freedoms. The Global South is becoming a part that cannot be bypassed in terms of bringing a solution for the main crises that affect the planet. Crises that come from a model that concentrates wealth and that affect mainly the poorest, and amongst these, the migrants. The alternative to the scourges of the neoliberal globalization will not come from the racist extreme right and xenophobic right. Development cannot be the privilege of just a few. Only an inclusive social project will allow us to build prosperous societies that are free, democratic, and sovereign. There will be no stability, neither democracy, with hunger and unemployment. The moment is very proper to reclaim the best humanist traditions of the great leaders of the decolonization of Africa. To be humanist today implies to condemn the attacks that were perpetrated by Hamas against Israeli civilians and to demand the immediate freedom of all hostages. To be humanist also imposes equally to refuse an unproportional reaction from Israel that victimized almost 30,000 Palestinians in Gaza, the majority of them women and children, and that has provoked the forced displacement of more than 80% of the population. The solution for this crisis will only be everlasting if we move fast, advancing in the creation of a Palestine state, free and sovereign, a Palestine state that is recognized as full member of the United Nations. To have a strengthened UN, and that we should have a UN Security Council that should have a greater representation without countries that have veto powers and with permanent members from Africa and Latin America. For 2 years, the Ukraine war shows and paralyzes and exposes the UN Security Council. Besides the tragic loss of lives, we see the consequences that are felt around the world in the price of the food, stable, and fertilizers. There will be no military solution for this conflict. Now is the time for politics and diplomacy. Ladies and gentlemen, with your 1,500,000,000 inhabitants and its immense and very rich territory, Africa has tremendous possibilities for the future. Brazil wants to grow and needs to go together with Africa. The Brazilian people is restoring its political and economic sovereignty. We are adopting an ecological transformation project that will allow us to have a quality leap forward in an historic way. We are reclaiming our democracy, making it more and more a participatory democracy. With the Bolsa Família, the family stipend, and other public policies that are well succeeded, we will once again leave the map of hunger, withdrawing millions, lifting millions from poverty. To talk about inclusive education, which is the theme of this summit meeting, is to talk about the future. In the world, almost 250 million children are out of school. In Brazil, we are implementing schools in full time, besides the payment of a small savings for the students, the poor students in the secondary school, as a way to reduce school dropouts. We will enhance the number of scholarships that will be offered for the students from African students that study in our public institutions of higher education. We are willing to develop educational programs together with Africa and to promote intense exchange of professors and researchers between the two. We want to collaborate that Africa could become independent in terms of food production and providing clean energy and from renewable sources. We're talking about 400 million hectares squatted in more than 25 countries, with a great potential to make this continent a great barn for the world, making feasible policies to fight hunger and to produce alternative sources of energy, including biofuels. I would like also to extend our partnership to the healthcare area. There's a lot to learn with the sanitation strategies on both sides and the possibility for us to structure robust public systems that have a broad outreach. Let's work with the African Center for Control and Prevention of Diseases to confront tropical diseases that are neglected by the developed world. Let's have as a goal to enhance the access to medication, avoiding the repetition of the apartheid of vaccines that we saw during the COVID-19. With that, we should also take care of the health of our planet. That should also be our top priority. the imperative to protect the two largest tropical forests of the world, the Amazon tropical forest and the Congo tropical forest, and will make us players, important players in the climate change agenda. The international instruments existing today are not sufficient to reward in an efficient way the protection of these forests, their biodiversity, and the people that live in the forests, that take care and rely on these biomes. With the reclaiming of degraded areas, we can create a true green belt of protecting our forests from the global south. Together with our African partners, Brazil wants to develop and to build a family of satellites so that we can monitor together the deforestation and to monitor our agricultural output. To move forward with all these initiatives, we will create an advanced post of cooperation together with the African Union in sectors such as agricultural research, healthcare, education, environment, science, and technology. Our diplomatic representation here in Addis Ababa will soon have employees of government agencies from Brazil, like the Brazilian Agency for Cooperation, our Brazilian Agricultural Research Company, and Fiocruz, a foundation for research and development in agriculture and health. All this is to see if we can recover and restore our possibility of cooperation with the African countries. The presence of the African Union as a full member of the G20 will be of great value, but it's still necessary to include other countries of this continent as full members of the G20. I discovered something very interesting. When I made a visit to many African countries in the past to try to manage to get support so that Brazil could host the Olympic Games of 2016, I discovered something that was extraordinary. That was the following: the power of the rich and the power of the poor. I discovered that the African continent, with 54 countries, had less delegates to the International Olympic Committee than countries with 6 million inhabitants only. And so it's necessary to change this, and we have to take into account that we have to gather urgently the representation of the developing countries in the multilateral fora and in the institutions that were created during Bretton Woods in '45, so that we can try to fix the world and avoid new wars. These institutions that were created a long time ago don't help us anymore. On the contrary, they strangle countries. So that's why we have common agenda to advocate for. It is unacceptable that a world that is capable to create wealth in the order of $100 trillion per year, we still have to live with more than 735 million people that are in hunger. We're creating at the G20, which Brazil chairs, a global alliance against hunger so that we can trigger a set of public policies and mobilize resources to finance these policies. Around 60 countries, many of them coming from Africa, are very close to bankruptcy and destined more resources to pay back their foreign debt than for applying the resources to education and health care. This reflects the obsolete nature of the financial institutions such as the IMF and the World Bank that many times aggravate crises that they should help to solve. It is necessary to seek solutions to transform unfair and unpayable debts in concrete assets like highways, railroads, hydroelectrical plants, wind farms, solar power, green hydrogen production of energy, and transmission lines. We have to follow step by step the evolution of the new technologies. Artificial intelligence cannot be the monopoly of very few countries and companies. They cannot also be the fertile terrain for hate discourses and misinformation, besides causing unemployment and reinforcing the biases of race and gender that create more injustice and discrimination. Brazil will promote the interaction of the G20 with the high-level panel created by the Secretary General of the UN to support the discussions about the Global Digital Compact. We hope with that to contribute for an effective and multilateral governance in terms of artificial intelligence, and that will incorporate fully the interests of the Global South. My friends, I would like to end saying that there's no Global South without the African continent. To go back and to reclaim the getting closer Brazil with Africa and to restore historical ties and to contribute to build a new world order that is more fair and with solidarity, and allow us mainly to add up our efforts to overcome the challenge that we have ahead. And I would like to say to our friends here from the African continent, Brazil always looked around to the world without looking towards the African continent. Brazil, for many centuries, was governed looking towards the U.S. and Europe, looking to Europe, and Brazil never didn't look to South America, that it gave its back, and even less, we looked towards the African continent. When I took the presidency, when I took office in 2003, I decided that Brazil should get closer to the African continent, understanding what the Brazilian ambassador in those days would say, that said that Africa and Brazil had borderlines between themselves. They were only divided by a river called the Atlantic Ocean. The ocean is not a hurdle, so for us to get closer, it is a blessing from God for us. And so that's why not only I visit 20 times the African continent, and I open 19 embassies, Brazilian embassies in the African continent. I open a plant, an antiretroviral plant in Mozambique, and we brought agricultural technological company came to Ghana. But that's all over. Now I came back to be the president of the country, and I want to say to all of you here that I'm back, and I want to give my contribution to the African continent. Brazil doesn't have everything that we think we have. Brazil doesn't have all the money that I would enjoy for us to have. Brazil doesn't have all the scientific and technological knowledge that I would enjoy that we would have. Brazil does not have in the world the strength that it should have. But what I would like to end with my words is to say to all of you here, everything, little or a lot, that Brazil has, I want to share it with the African countries, because we have an historical indebtedness of 350 years of enslavement, and the only way to pay back this debt is through truth and with a lot of love. A great hug to all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Aquí.
Thank you. Thank you many, many times, Your Excellency, for your statement. And now, Excellencies, honorable delegates, it's my distinct honor and pleasure to invite His Excellency, Mr. Ghazali Osmani, President of the Union of Comoros and Chairperson of the African Union, to deliver his opening statement. Thank you.
Oh là là. Excellences, Monsieur le Premier ministre d'Éthiopie,
Excellency, Prime Minister, Excellencies, Heads of State and Government, Excellency Lula da Silva, President of Brazil, Honorable Prime Minister of Palestine, our dear brother Abul Ghais, Secretary General of the League of Arab States, my dear brother Moussa Faki, Chairperson of the African Union Commission, Honorable Ministers, distinguished ambassadors, heads of delegation, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May I, first of all, with all the emotion, feeling, and sadness, to convey on your behalf and on my own behalf my heartfelt condolence to the authorities, the people, and the family of the late President, our brother, former President Yaa'ii Gamtaa, the President of the Republic of Namibia. He is passing away. It's a great loss for his country, but also for our continental organization. I would like to seize this opportunity to convey to you all my best wishes for this new year 2024. May this year bring us happiness, health, and prosperity. Then I would like to thank most warmly the government of Ethiopia for the warm welcome. Each time that we come for a meeting here, we are accorded this warm welcome each time we come for these sessions, and all the facilities in cooperation with the African Union Commission to ensure the success of the 37th Ordinary Session of the Assembly of our organization. I would like also to greet all my colleagues, heads of state and government, who work relentlessly for the development of our organization, the Pan-African organization. Furthermore, I would like to thank my brother Moussa Faki,
notre mission commune au service de notre cher continent. Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs, il a été notre mission commune au service de notre cher continent. Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs, il y a une mission offrant ainsi la possibilité à un État insulaire de conduire la destinée de notre continent dans un esprit de solidarité inclusif entre toutes les catégories des États membres de notre organisation. Cet élan de solidarité m'a conduit, en plus du thème de l'année 2023 consacré à l'accélération de la ZLECAf, à inscrire au centre de mon mandat les questions liées à la gouvernance maritime, au changement climatique, avec l'intérêt particulier pour la promotion et la préservation de la paix et la sécurité dans notre cher continent. Cette préoccupation sécuritaire partagée aura guidé toutes nos actions au cours de mon mandat, convaincu que la pacification de notre continent demeure le socle de la réalisation de notre vision à l'horizon 2063 pour une Afrique unie et prospère. Et c'est ainsi que, dès mon investiture à la présidence de notre organisation, ma première action a été de prendre part au débat du haut niveau organisé par le Conseil de sécurité des Nations Unies, présidé par notre pays frère, le Mozambique, à New York au mois de mars 2023, consacré à la lutte contre le terrorisme et l'extrémisme violent. À cette occasion, j'ai plaidé pour la mise en place des mécanismes de financement pérennes et durables en faveur des opérations de maintien de la paix sur le continent africain. Dans cette dynamique de promotion de la paix, et s'agissant du Soudan, ce pays frère, j'ai initié plusieurs rencontres avec les deux généraux, Al-Burhan et Meki, ainsi qu'avec les différents acteurs de la guerre en vue de les engager sur la voie du dialogue pour faire taire les armes. Animés de la même volonté de préserver...
Imbued with the same spirit, I went to Guinea-Conakry in June and recently to Gabon to encourage their leaders to speed up the transitional process and to bring them back to the fold and to restore constitutional order. I also met the delegations of the Sahel and sent envoys to the different countries of that region to preach peace, harmony on behalf of our organization. With regard to the crisis in the eastern part of DRC, I maintain close contact with President of the Republic of Angola, who was mandated by our organization, and I had the honor to chair the summit, the quadripartite summit on 27 June in Luanda, in the presence of regional organizations and the countries of the Great Lakes region, in order to find appropriate solution to the resolution of this crisis. In the beginning of this month, February, at the high-level summit of the African Union on Libya, held in Brazzaville, under the chairmanship of our brother Sassou Nguesso, president of the high-level committee, and I reaffirmed the imperative need for bringing peace to this great country of our continent so that we could restore peace and stability and development in that country. Peace in Africa depends on Ukraine and to Russia last June in order to convey the message of mediation of Africa in the conflict and dispute that opposes the two countries and the negative impact on our economies. I supported on behalf of my country the initiative taken by South Africa, and once again I want to thank and encourage President Ramaphosa, the International Court of Justice, to denounce the genocide which Israel is committing in Palestine on our nose. The international community cannot close its eyes on the atrocities that are committed, which has not only created chaos in Palestine, but also has disastrous consequences on the rest of the world. Indeed, what is happening there. Thus, I would like to call upon our Assembly to contribute, to put an end to the sufferings of the Palestinian people, and to continue to support the efforts aimed at establishing two states, Israel and Palestine, living side by side in peace and stability. Honorable Prime Minister of Palestine, rest assured that African Union is with Palestine and will support Palestine for its unity and its dignity. As you know, in 2023, the Union of the Comoros took over the mantle of the chairmanship of the African Union and placed it under the theme of acceleration of the implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area. And in this context, I carried out an advocacy with the countries that had not yet ratified the AFCFTA agreement by sending envoys that made it possible to accelerate the process of their acceding to that process. We managed to increase the number of the countries in the new initiative and guided trade initiative. In addition, efforts have been made and results obtained in the ratification as well as the application of the tariff offers to the Secretary General of the AFCFTA. Furthermore, the Secretary General of the AFCFTA had done us the honor of visiting Moroni, and it was an opportunity to discuss the very basis of the functioning of the AFCFTA, destined to make African countries and the private sector contribute effectively in the trade environment established within the framework of the AFCFTA agreement. In the activities, I also made the advocacy in favor of increasing investments, public and private investments, and particularly in the area of infrastructure and the reform of the international financial institutions. In this regard, I want to commend the remarkable work done by the President of the African Development Bank, our brother Adesina, whom I ask you to applaud, who has left no stone unturned in order to support the African members, African countries, through the promotion of infrastructures and innovative infrastructure. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the term as chairman of the African Union has been an opportunity which has been a lever for us to encourage the consideration of the potentialities on the vast maritime areas and the continental exclusive zone, so that this continental vision could be inclusive. Agenda 2063, whose second 10-year plan will determine this blue economy as being the new frontier, the new border of African Renaissance. In this perspective, in Moroni, we organized a ministerial conference on blue economy and climate action in June 2023. The Moroni Declaration adopted on that occasion, in fact, pleads for common large-scale action that will highlight the various contributions to the island states as well as the coastal states, or the development of our continent. This declaration has been taken into account at the first summit on climate held in Nairobi in 2023 and in COP28 in Dubai. And I want to say that 2023 has been decisive for our continent, because peace and Africa's agenda has been presented everywhere. Africa that wins, Africa that we want, and also the admission of African Union in the G20 is also a success. And this augurs well for the prospects of our continent, in the sense that Africa henceforth forms part of world economic governance. This raises a lot of hope as regards the legitimate claims of Africa to be considered to have a permanent seat in the UN Security Council. Dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, at all international summits in which I participated in my capacity as the current chairman of the African Union, G7 in Japan, going through the second summit, Russia-Africa in Russia, the BRICS in South Africa, then Africa in Cuba, and also the EU is in Brussels and the Africa-Italy summit. I left no stone unturned to defend the interests of our continent by participating in the conference that is Compact with Africa held in Berlin, Germany in November 2023, in the presence of many African colleagues and European colleagues. I wanted to mark our interest in the growth in private investment, national and foreign investments, in order to create jobs and wealth sharing on the continent. Participating in the recent summit, that is Italy-Africa, of course followed the same route. This country that has assumed the chairmanship of G7, I urge them to accelerate the implementation of the partnership for infrastructure and investments. Furthermore, I would like to underscore that the potential of African youth in Africa is an asset that we have to use in all our projects. I welcome the initiative of 1 million plus launched by Auda Nepad in Moroni, and which aims at making our youth an important and necessary link in the development of Africa. So, particular attention was given to the integration and to fight against such scourges as violence against discrimination against women. In Moroni, the positive masculinity was held also in Moroni, and we organized jointly with President Ramaphosa in South Africa the third Conference of Men on Positive Masculinity of the African Union in November 2023. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, may I stress that Africa should make sure that its voice is heard in the architecture of development financing, which is being unfolded under the G20. We have to seize the opportunity of our pertinence to the G20 in order to form alliances and coalition with our partners so that the ongoing reforms at the international level be in line with the collective interests of our countries. At the time when I will hand over, I want to say here loudly and clearly that I am very much grateful and that you have honored me on behalf of my country, the Union of the Comoros, in the service of our continent and the sons and daughters of this continent. And I cannot conclude my statement without expressing my sincere gratitude to the states of the East African region who did me the honor of entrusting to me the responsibility of taking the chairmanship of the organization. I want to thank the members of the Bureau of the Assembly and the chairperson of the African Union Commission for the active solidarity that had marked our common action, the convergence of views and on various issues, and also that we be heard. I express my gratitude to all the partners, bilateral and multilateral partners, who have given me their invaluable support in the exercise of my mandate as the chairman of the African Union. And I don't forget the remarkable work done by my colleagues in Moroni, the government, members of the cabinet, and the support